the Iran nuclear talks have just started again in Vienna, right? And as a side note, again, I'm one of the only people on the ground independently covering it, so I have a whole playlist about the Iran nuclear deal. It's also called the JCPOA. I have a whole playlist on the channel. I interviewed the Russian ambassador, the deputy foreign minister of Iran, who's also the chief negotiator, Professor Merendi, just lots of great interviews in there, and insight on what the nuclear talks are about and what the nuclear deal is about. The Israelis don't like the nuclear deal. All right? They really don't like it. And this might seem weird to you, because if all you've heard is that Iran is building a nuclear bomb, and the nuclear deal is meant to stop Iran from building a nuclear bomb, then why would Israel not like the nuclear deal? Right? It's a good thing. It stops Iran from building a nuclear bomb. Well, I tell you why they don't like it, because basically the nuclear deal allows Iran to be normal. It allows Iran to engage in trade with the rest of the world. It allows Iran to export its oil, to sell it abroad, right? I don't know why, but apparently Iran needs permission from this. That's how imperialism works. But the deal is that the Iranians, they put limits on their nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. The Israelis don't want that. They want Iran to be isolated, because right now, for example, Iran cannot sell its oil on the global market. Iran is still selling the oil, by the way. Don't worry. It just gets relabeled, or it goes to China, or it goes to Venezuela, and so on. Countries that actually have brains. But basically, officially, Iran's oil sector, they've been targeted by sanctions. And if you go look at that famous BBC graph that I've shown you, you can see that the oil output just, drops by half after Trump leaves the deal and he puts sanctions on Iran. And of course, the banking sector. So, you can't send money or receive money from an Iranian bank. They're like nuclear, no pun intended. You can't touch them. It's a hot potato. Can't touch it. And basically, there are so many big companies. I'm talking like giant, French automobile giants, telecommunications giants that have invested in Iran and lost billions of dollars because of Trump, because of the nuclear deal. He left it, right? And of course, who is behind that? It's the Israelis. They pushed Trump. Trump was such a good gift for the Israelis. He gave them so much. And that's what it's about. The Israelis want Iran to be isolated, both figuratively and quite literally in terms of its oil and banking sector. That's what this is about. That's why they hate the nuclear deal. And again, there's no proof that Iran is actually building a nuclear bomb. You could maybe argue that up until 2003, so before 2003, but since then, you just can't say that. It's just, I don't know what to tell you. They followed the nuclear deal. They're still in it, by the way. Like when you hear Blinken say, oh, Iran have to follow the nuclear deal. Iran, what do you mean? You are not in the nuclear deal. Iran is. And that's why the Israelis are now attacking Gaza. Okay, this is the logic. They're sending a message to Iran and to the other parties that are negotiating with the nuclear deal that we don't like that. That's what they're doing. So they've gone and attacked PIJ, so Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Let me tell you about Palestinian Islamic Jihad. So this is basically a resistance group. Okay, they of course they say terrorists, whatever. I mean, when you're occupying someone's land and they resist, yeah, you're going to call them a terrorist. But PIJ is a couple of decades old. I think it was formed in the 80s, and it's based in Damascus, of course, right? Syria. One of the reasons why Syria was destroyed is being destroyed still in this 10-year war is because Syria still supports the resistance. Always has. You can definitely make some arguments that there are times Damascus didn't give Palestinians the support they wanted or needed. But generally speaking, Syria refuses to normalize ties with Israel and helps Hamas, Hezbollah, PIJ do their things, right? They allow them to build, to establish headquarters. That's what PIJ did, right? So their headquarters they're based in Damascus. And the leader, right, he just went now to Tehran. So we're talking about Ziad Nakhleh. And that's why he's saying, oh, their leader is in Tehran. This is a proxy of Iran. And their logic is, okay, well, if you're backed by Iran, and they are, Iran proudly supports PIJ, then we're going to attack you to send a message to Iran, to send a message about the nuclear deal. So they took advantage of this to be like, okay, you know what, we're going to ramp things up because the nuclear talks are going on. And that often this is what often happens. You can go back and see some of my videos that, when Israel carries out assassinations or bombings, it's because of the nuclear talks. They're trying to sabotage the nuclear talks. I don't know if they actually can at this point. The United States pretty much sabotaged them themselves. But regardless, this is what it's about. So what's going on in Gaza is certainly connected to the nuclear talks. That's one thing, right? And of course, the Israelis, they're a bit confused because Hamas is the governing body in Gaza, in Gaza. Okay? So once again, Hamas is a political party and it has a military wing. PIJs, their military wing is the Quds. And my point is that when you look at what's going on now with Ziad Nakhaleh in Damascus, with the nuclear talks, of course he's there. Of course, Nakhaleh is going to go to Tehran because they're proudly backed by Iran. This is not a surprise. Look at the headline over here from Press TV. Look what they say. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. So again, when we say IRGC, we're talking about the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. We'll just say Guard Corps for short. So the head of the Guard Corps said that Israel is going to pay a heavy price for these violent attacks on Gaza. All right, this is from just a few hours ago. This is the quote. Undoubtedly, the swift response of the Palestinian Islamic resistance to such a crime proves that a new era has begun for the resistance to take power, and the Zionists will pay yet another heavy price for their recent crime. I just want to go back to my point that Hamas is the governing body in Gaza. They're not saying anything. There were reports a couple of months ago that Hamas was not happy with other groups, other militant groups, resistance groups in Gaza firing rockets or balloons because they just weren't happy with that. Right now, they're not saying anything. They're basically turning a blind eye and letting PIJ do its thing. They're like, you know what? We don't even have anything against that. Go ahead, fire the volley of rockets, which you don't see all the time, right? It's normal. You can still have a unified resistance. And then inside that unified resistance, not everybody agrees with each other all the time. It's like having a marriage or a family or whatever. It's normal. But here, right now, everybody agrees with each other, right? Hamas are cool with this. They're letting PIJ do its thing. And they believe that they have the right to respond. And they're not going to interfere. They're not going to intervene. And they're not going to stop it. But at the same time, when I say Hamas are okay with it, Hamas are not firing their own rockets or anything like that. They're just turning a blind eye, you could say. I want to say another thing because when we talk about the resistance, we shouldn't forget the other elements. Syria, as I mentioned, supports the resistance by allowing the arms to come through, by allowing them to establish bases there, or headquarters rather. And the Iraqi resistance, the Yemeni resistance have come out and expressed their support today, just a few hours ago. Again, this is all breaking news. They've come out and expressed their support for the Palestinians, right? So this is from Yemen. They say the headline is from Al Mayadeen English. They say that Ansar Allah announces support of Palestinian resistance, and they strongly condemn the Israeli aggression on Gaza. Hezbollah, just earlier there was a speech by Nasrallah. When there's something huge happening like this assault, this Israeli aggression on Gaza, he comes and gives his opinion, and gives not his opinion, rather a warning, because this is what he told the Israelis straight up, that this is a crime, that it's a massacre, and that they're ready to support them if necessary. Okay, so Nasrallah, who's the head of Hezbollah, said that, quote, any honorable person will condemn this attack. Many Arab countries and regimes remain silent. This is very important what he says here. It is the right of the resistance and the Palestinian people to respond to the Israeli attack in any way and at any time and place they choose. Silence in the face of this act of terror will pave the way for more acts of terror. That's true. When you have a bully and you don't respond to that bully, they're just emboldened, unfortunately. And again, let me be very clear. I don't condone violence. I'm against war. But you can't, just say that, oh, well, we have to punch the Palestinians in the face and walk all over them, kick them, and then just, when they resist, that's terrorism. Are you high? Or these headlines on Fox, like, oh, they're exchanging fire. Well, what is this passive voice? Or NPR writing the same thing. Most Western, outlets writing the same thing. Like, there's something happening there. I saw smoke. What? They just assassinated someone in Palestinian Islamic Jihad. What did you think was going to happen? But I want to go back to that line from the quote from Nasrallah, where he says that many Arab countries and regimes remain silent. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's true. So what have I just told you in the last few minutes? That the Yemeni resistance, the Iraqi resistance, Syria, Iran, and Hezbollah, they've all come out, condemned this, and said, we are ready to support you in any way possible. Okay, what about the Arab countries? What the hell? There are a lot of Arab countries, dozens. Where's Saudi Arabia's condemnation of this? Are they going to offer their support? Huh? Where is everybody else? Where's the UAE? Huh? Where's Morocco? Where is Libya? That hurts, man. Where is Libya? They destroyed it. They destroyed Libya. Not many Arab countries are coming out and supporting. Now, I think Egypt and Tunisia, they have condemned it. But again, this is breaking news, and I'm covering it as it's developing. So if I miss one country or I miss one development that's happening while I'm live, I'm trying to keep track of all of them. When we look at this video, this assassination by the Israelis, that it's happening in they're bombing residential buildings. They've done this in Syria as well, right? So, for example, they assassinated Samir Qantar in Jaramana because he was part of the resistance. And again, Jaramana is like really tightly packed, residential area, poverty-stricken, to put it mildly. But I love it, and it's it's not the nicest part of Damascus. I still love it. But my point is that it's very, if you assassinate one guy, you're going to hurt other people in Jaramana because the buildings are so close to each other. Everything is so tightly packed. And that kind of speaks to my point of how indiscriminate the Israelis are, right? They always... Have you seen that movie by Spielberg? You remember that movie by Munich, I think it was called. And there's this scene where the Mossad, they see that, this little girl is going to get blown up by the bomb that we planted to take out this guy. And then they're all running like crazy. Oh my God, we have to stop the bomb before the little girl. That's such propaganda, like trying to show the Mossad as caring about hurting civilians. They don't give a fuck. Have you seen the number of assassinations they've done where they've just to kill one guy, they've blown up 11 people and injured I don't know how many others. This is normal. Whether it's the Israeli, the occupation forces or the Mossad, it's normal. God, that was such awful propaganda in that movie, really. Again, urge you to think of the nuclear talks in Vienna, and of course I will have more coverage on the nuclear talks as they develop. Exclusive coverage, exclusive interviews that you won't get anywhere else. As far as I know, I'm the only person covering this independently. You see other papers and channels, but independence, I don't know, not to my knowledge.